Welcome back to another episode of Dolphins in Depth, the podcast provided to you by the Miami Herald. It is officially June 1st. We do not have a countdown anymore for the date and time when Jalen Ramsey can be traded. He is officially eligible to be traded. He's always been eligible to be traded, but now there is going to be a substantial amount of cap space that becomes free. Joining me to talk about Jalen Ramsey's impending departure from the organization is Isaiah Smalls, Miami Dolphins beat writer for the Miami Herald. Isaiah, how soon do you expect a deal to get done for Jalen Ramsey?
If I was a betting man, I'm betting that the deal is actually already done. It's already in place. There is a willing partner who was willing to, wait until that June 1st deadline, so to speak, to get the deal done officially and announce the deal. But I believe it's already in place. It's just, just got to take some, time to, once that June 1st deadline gets in, it's done. Personally.
Here's my thing about this impending trade. I think Jalen Ramsey holds a lot of cards on it, primarily because it's a high salary. He wants to play for a contender. More than likely, he wants to cherry pick the city that he's going to go to. Even though it seems like Detroit and Green Bay are contenders, can I see Jalen Ramsey kind of envision himself playing for the? I don't know, because he's only played for tropical weather teams at this point in his career. Yeah. He is a Tennessee native. I can't see him going to the Tennessee Titans. He has relationships with Raheem Morris. I could potentially see him going to the Atlanta Falcons, depending on what his feelings are in Michael Penix, the quarterback. A lot of times when you factor in where a team can go and how well they can play, I think you have to factor in what that quarterback is capable of. Yes. There's been talks about him going back to the Rams. The Rams have not closed the door, but I think they've basically said they're moving on from those discussions. It's kind of a situation that's gotten tabled. I think a lot of that is because of Jalen Ramsey's salary and the ramifications. There are some people who think that, much like the Ryan Tannehill trade, where the Dolphins offered $6 million to the team that received him, offered to pay $6 million of the salary, the Dolphins would sweeten the deal by paying some of Jalen Ramsey's salary. Now, keep in mind, they've already paid a $4 million bonus, paying 4 of the $24 million he's due to make in 2025. Should they, could they, would they, in your opinion, Isaiah, do more?
I personally, I don't think so. Only because, look, at the end of the day, they have their own cap issues, right? Like if there wasn't an issue, Jalen Ramsey would have already been gone, right? Because you just for the sanctity of your team, right, and the chemistry, and you guys just want to kind of get it over with, he would have been gone, right? And so I personally don't think that they're going to be paying any money, because he would have already, if it was about the money, he would have already been gone, right? So I personally don't believe there's going to be no money exchange in this regard.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens and how quickly it happens. Obviously, Jalen put out a countdown 5 days earlier last week. It'll be interesting to see how quickly he moves and where he goes and what they receive for him. In my mind, just because of the salary, I would be shocked if they get anything better than a 4th round pick. I honestly feel that it could be a player. I feel like it could be some veteran, overpaid player that another team is interested in moving off of, and the Dolphins will inherit his salary. We've seen that in multiple cases. The trade that got Miami Byron Maxwell and Kiko Alonso from the Eagles, that was a situation where Eagles wanted to dump him. Miami seemingly wanted to take him. I don't know why, but that's how that trade came about. It'll be interesting to see what happens from there. But we saw OTAs, the first glimpse of OTAs last week. We had 1 day of action out of the 3 days of the team practice on the field in helmets and shirts and skins. We talked about our impressions in an earlier episode. Isaiah, what are your expectations for week 2 of OTAs, which we'll be able to get a sneak peek of on Tuesday?
I want to see more from the rookies. I want to see at least one rookie kind of stand out, right? To have one of those plays or just catch something that makes me be like, okay, like I see why they got him. Preferably,
I would tell you, Ollie Gordon had a nice run last week.
So I tweeted that earlier. I did like a little mailbag today with some of the Dolphins fans, and they asked me what rookie stood out. Unfortunately, I was writing, but I did mention that you had spoke highly of Ollie Gordon. I'm more so looking for somebody along that defensive or offensive line to make a play, right? I want to see what they got in KG, right? I want to see something from Jonah, right? Just because, granted, again, like it's very light, right? There's no pass, right? But I still want to be able to just to see a glimpse of why they made these trades, or not these trades, why they drafted KG, why they invested those draft picks in moving up to get Jonas, right? Because these are two guys that essentially are supposed to be the cornerstone of not just this draft, but just of this team going forward, right?
You want to feel their presence.
I want to, yes, I want to see it.
The only thing I will say about that, especially with trench players, is when you're doing OTAs and there are no pads, the contact is very limited. So you're not going to be running a lot. And even when you are going to be running a lot, you're not going to be very physical and take it to the ground. When there's pads, there's a little bit more protection. You might see a little bit more physicality. Right now, it's just pitter pat. So I don't know if you're going to see Kenneth Grant collapse in the pocket that much. However, OTAs is really flag football or 7-on-7s,
right?
Glorified 7-on-7. So that's mostly skilled players. But I will say there should be some opportunity. You know who stood out to me? That Taj Washington kid. Tiny little receiver, fast, little slot. Obviously, he was drafted in the same company as Malik Washington. We all saw the contributions that Malik Washington made to the team last year. Maybe Taj Washington can give a similar contribution. The only knock I have about him is he's probably the smallest receiver on the team right now. And we all know receivers are, they're about this big on this Miami Dolphins team. As Bill Parcells once said, when you make an exception, Bill Parcells once said in the draft, when you make an exception, the next thing you know, you have a team full of exceptions.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Miami Dolphins wide receiver unit, it is a unit full of exceptions. So we need a little bit of size. It would be nice if Eric Uzukama or Nick Westbrook, Nick Westbrook, I don't know how to say his name.
NIW or NWI.
NWI, yeah. NWI. I'm not calling the man NWI. Yeah, I do call the man K Dot, so maybe I don't know what I'm gonna call guy. It'll be nice if some of these guys with some size do a little bit of contributions, a little bit stepped up and gave a little bit more than what we've seen so far.
One more, because I said all the rookies. I'm specifically also going to be looking at Jason Marshall Jr. because I just want to see what he can contribute. I wrote a story earlier this week about why he could be a starter for the Dolphins, just considering the cornerback room and the lack of experience there. And Weaver talked about not being scared to even throw the rookies into the fire, right? Mm-hmm. And I believe somebody at NFL.com, one of the draft analysts whose name is escaping me right now, he listed Jason Marshall Jr. as one of the I think 16 rookies that could be a day one starter in this league. But it's based strictly off the opportunity, right? The Dolphins believe in him. He's a size corner. They said he's athletic. He can move well. And especially in this league, and really over the last 5 years, we've seen these corners get thrown out there as rookies and make a name for themselves, right? Kenyon Mitchell, Sauce Gardner, the list goes on and on, right? And so I say that to say, Jason Marshall Jr., obviously a 5th round pick, might not have the pedigree in terms of draft status, of the other guys, but at the same time, if the Dolphins believe in him, they believe in him.
Yeah, I didn't see him that much in the week that in last week. I didn't pay attention specifically, but especially if, let's say, Cam Smith cannot practice this week because of the hamstring injury, we're probably going to get a lot more Jason Marshall Jr. And as Mike McDaniel talked, this is anybody's job. If you want it, you can go get it. Yeah. I can honestly say and acknowledge that I was not very impressed with what I saw on day one, but it's day one for me, day two for them. Who's to say they can improve, get better? I would be a lot more confident if there was a veteran added to the room. But right now, Kader Kohou and Artie Burns are your two veterans in the room. To take that for whatever it is. But I'm interested to see what the Dolphins do moving forward. I know Chris Greer oftentimes waits until he's watched all of OTAs, all of minicamp, evaluate what he has to supplement, to figure out what he needs to do to supplement the roster. I certainly expect that that's what they're going to be doing moving forward. But in my opinion, it's going to have to be the offense that carries this team this year. And that puts a heavy load on Tua Tagovailoa. Yeah, earlier this week, Mike McDaniel talked about his expectations for Tua going into year 6? Going into year 6 for the starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. He's been a 5-year starter. Tua has led the league in passer rating, yards thrown for, completion percentage. He's produced 3 straight 100 passer rating seasons. Now the question is, can he deliver a winning playoff team for the Miami Dolphins? And here's Mike McDaniel addressing that topic and the next steps that he wants to see from Tua.
Year 4 of the system, really going through the process and understanding, what his job is and how to excel at it. It's consistency of development for him. And, I think there was a lot of lessons learned, last year in particular, on and off the field, when he was playing and when he wasn't, how to do his job. I think there's, I'll let him talk at specificity. When we're talking, he's the quarterback, the franchise quarterback of a team, his job is to lead men each and every play and finding different ways to continue the process of evolution for him. That's always been the name of the game for him, and whether that's getting the offense to the line of scrimmage faster, out of the huddle, or whether that's being able to adjust protections, do side adjusts, grow in his game, work on progressions, working on escaping the pocket and getting rid of it. All of the things that a quarterback's asked to do, I think that's where he's at. Is there's nothing. He's dipped his toe in the water with everything, and now it's consistency of mastery, and that's why it's a never-ending exercise.
There are a couple of key phrases and key things that Mike McDaniel said in regards to Tua, consistency and mastery of what he's doing. This is Tua's 4th year in this offense. The one thing I really have an issue with most people who talk about Tua Tagovailoa is this thought process, this theory, this perception that a 27-year-old quarterback cannot improve. A guy who started 5 years in the NFL, like, this is as good as he's going to get. I would argue to you, he's at the Drew Brees stage in his development early in the Saints. Drew Brees had his first 5 years with the Chargers, and then when he got with Sean Payton, his game elevated to another level. And I'm not saying that Tua Tagovailoa is going to be Drew Brees, but I think there's another level of elevation. When you have run the same offense for a number of years, things start to click. Things become easier. When you've seen every defense that teams can throw at you, it becomes a little bit easier to process. What the Houston Texans did to him, which I expect just about every team to carbon copy in the coming seasons. that's something that he's going to have to counteract. That's something that he's going to have to address. And then just more familiarity with the weapons. He didn't have an established relationship with Jonnu Smith. He was developing a relationship with Devon Achane. Obviously, he had Waddle and Tyreek. I think Tyreek wasn't the player that he was last season in his previous season. So, why is it that people think that Tua cannot develop, cannot get better, cannot be, a more thorough quarterback?
No, I mean, I'm inclined to agree with you just because you look at somebody like Drew Brees, right? Specifically, like he didn't have some of his best years until he was in his 30s, right? So there's definitely room for improvement for Tua. And I know it's something that we mentioned earlier. He's led the league in completions and yards and pass rating. Why not lead the league in passing touchdowns at this point, right? Like that would be great. But again, that's something that speaks to what? Availability, right? And so that's going to be the number one question just always surrounding Tua. And I hate that because I know he doesn't like it, right? But at the end of the day,
tough city said the kitty.
That's real. I mean, that's real. Until as McDaniel likes to say, narratives exist for a reason, and until you prove it otherwise, you kind of just got to sit in it, right? And so this has to be the season for him to prove that that narrative otherwise. Where I would love for him to lead the league in passing touchdowns, right? That would be cool. That adds some excitement not only to our jobs, but it adds some excitement to the on-field product. And I know for the fans as well, everyone likes to see touchdowns being thrown, right? And so I think that's the next challenge for him. Obviously availability is number one, but I lead the league in a category that we haven't seen yet, right? And I that's what I know. That's something that you would say. That's something I definitely am inclined to agree with because at the end of the day, he's proven to be a top 15 to 12 quarterback in the league, right? And that's right, that's about where he's been, top 15 to 12.
That's right? About the neighborhood, yeah. But the question is, can he become a top 10 quarterback? Can he become a top 5 quarterback? I would argue to you, and I don't know where you stand in this discussion and debate, that Jalen Hurts is in the top 5 conversation.
Come on, that conversation. You already know how I feel about that.
Yeah, but I'm I know you're a little bit biased, but when you deliver the ring,
yeah,
and you take 2 teams to the Super Bowl, you're a dual threat quarterback.
I agree for you. I think, and I believe it was Emmanuel Acho that had said something to this point, and I'm not the biggest fan of him, but this is something that really stuck out to me. We have to change the way that we evaluate quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts, right? Because if you're looking for passing yards, you're looking for passing touchdowns, he's never going to jump off the page as a top 5 quarterback, right? But if you think about the thing that matters, the thing that you said that doesn't necessarily matter, but I believe matters. At the end of the day, you're playing for a ring, you're playing for a championship, and wins matter, right? Wins and losses matter, especially in the postseason.
I never said wins and losses don't matter.
You've said that it's not about playing for the ring. You said it's about
for NFL players.
Well, just
in legacy.
And in general, I believe in general, at the end of the day, you play for a ring. Right now,
yeah, I agree with you. When we're talking about Hall of Fame and legacy,
yeah,
I'm a ring counter. You don't go into the Hall of Fame as a first ballot, in my opinion, without a ring. You got to put some rings on the finger.
Put the heart in there. And so I just to wrap that up, I think I'm not saying that Tua and Jalen have a similar trajectory by no stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying that because Tua has. Just on paper, the being the more accurate quarterback, right? There isn't anything, at least from where I'm standing, that doesn't allow him to compete to be in that top 5 conversation. Right? He's an accurate thrower of the football. He moves well. Can he move better? Of course, but he can throw the ball accurately, and he has. And most important thing that I think that quarterbacks are often discredited for, right? But he has a great receiving core, right? And so when you have those 3 things, if you're accurate, you can move a little bit, and you have a great receiving core, there's no reason why you shouldn't be consistently in the top 5 quarterback conversation. Because I'm personally of the belief that the conversation should move year to year, right? Because if you just have Pat Mahomes up there, which I believe Pat Mahomes obviously deserves to be up there because of what he's done, right? But it kind of doesn't allow for new guys to enter into the conversation, right? Without anything.
Actually, Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. That you could put Joe Burrow there, and then it's up for debate and discussion about the next guy or the next crop, no matter who you want to make it. Jared Goff could be in the conversation. Matthew Stafford could be in the conversation. Dak Prescott, even though most people will hate on him, he'll be in the conversation. But I don't know who that fifth guy is. Yeah. I don't think there's really any consensus. If you ask Tyreek, it's Baker Mayfield. So who is to say Jalen Hurts does not belong in there? And I would argue to you and everybody else that Tua Tagovailoa, with the exception of the scrambling, is no lesser of a quarterback than Jalen Hurts, the quarterback that he beat out at Alabama. Keep in mind that Tua Tagovailoa, in the 2022 and 2023 season, he was in the MVP conversation in December. How it's not easy to be in the MVP conversation. There were points in the 2023 season where he was the front runner for the MVP honor, front runner in the Vegas odds. So I can't sit here and tell you that he can't be a top 5 quarterback, but the proof is in the pudding, and he's got to do it. I know what everybody says the knock on him is. He can't deliver in clutch moments. He can't play in the big game. But I will make this argument to people. It's not just him that doesn't deliver in those clutch moments. It's not just him that doesn't deliver in those big games. I believe they would have beaten They would have beaten Buffalo Bills if Jordan Poyer hadn't speared a defender, an offensive player. I believe they would have given Kansas City a better game in the regular season, not the playoffs, if Tyreek didn't gift them 7 points and then drop like another 2 passes. Circumstances play into how teams perform in those big games, and it's not just a quarterback that basically holds responsibility for those losses. Now, I get it; he makes the big money, so heavy is the head that wears the crown. But other people deserve some accountability too.
Of course, no. 110% agree. So this will be, I think, just to wrap it up, this will be a season that, I think there's a lot to prove across the board, right? Because I think everyone, we keep talking about that 2023 season as like not the end all be all, but like, it holds so much weight, I think, in this Dolphins fan base for good reason, right? Like they looked phenomenal towards the end of the season. Obviously they kind of collapsed, but they looked phenomenal for like 14 plus weeks. They look great for 14 plus weeks. Not phenomenal.
Look at you. I'm not even gonna attack your use of the word great for once.
Because they did. They looked great. They folded at the end of the season. And so I just, suffice to say, I think, the chatter, if they pay attention to chatter, which I'm sure some people do in different levels, but
they pay attention. The
chatter is that 2023 season is more of an outlier, looks more of an outlier than anything else, than consistent. Then this is their ability to play at that level consistently.
They were kind of playing at it in 2022 until Tua got hurt. And then, it's kind of faded. But, you see the common threads there.
Exactly. And hopefully, hopefully everyone down here saying their prayers and, everything. But if Tua can play 17 games, right? I mean, look, the sky is the limit for this team. Of course, we still have some questions along that offensive line. They still need 2 starting quarterbacks. But look, unfortunately there are worse positions to be in the NFL. So
that is true. You got a quarterback, you got a dynamic playmaker or 2 or 3. And you have a defensive coordinator that delivered a top 10 defense last year without all the pieces that he needed. So it'll be interesting to see how he produces, how he executes with the defense that he has in this season. On that note, this has been Dolphins in Depth podcast provided to you by Miami Herald. We will be back after Tuesday's OTA look-see on week 2 and give you the wrap-up of everything we saw and thought coming out of that practice. On that note, see you next week.